Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. Florence Correctional Complex in Colorado, often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, was built to be unbreakable. Thick concrete walls, automated cell doors, motion sensors, and more than 4,000 cameras watched every corner of the facility. Nothing inside that prison was supposed to go unseen. Nothing was supposed to happen without being recorded. But on the night of March 2nd, 2015, something went wrong. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the lights in Unit C4, one of the high-security wings, flickered twice, then went completely dark. In the control room, Officer Ronald Hale lifted his head from his desk, confused. He tapped the monitor screens, thinking the system had frozen. But then, one after another, the feeds went black. 1 second, he could see every cell, every hallway, every door. The next, all 42 screens showed nothing but darkness. Hale grabbed the radio. Control to maintenance. What just happened? I've got a full visual dropout on C4. No answer. He checked the building map. Power failure indicators appeared in 3 different units, not just one. That was impossible. The grid was built with triple fail-safe systems. Even in a regional outage, the prison's internal grid was designed to stay on. And yet everything was off. In Unit C4, the inmates woke up to absolute darkness. No hum from the lights. No sound from the ventilation fans. The silence was so unnatural that some inmates sat up in their beds immediately. Darkness in a prison is different. It carries weight. It carries possibility. Officer Hale tried again. Maintenance respond. I need a status. Finally, a voice crackled through, static, then a muffled reply. We're checking. Stand by. This isn't a normal failure. Before Hale could ask what that meant, the emergency generators kicked on. The hallway lights glowed dim blue. Some screens flickered back, showing grainy images from the few backup cameras still online. But in the 12 seconds of total blackout, something had happened. On the screen for camera B19, Hale saw movement, multiple inmates standing near their cell doors, facing a hallway as if they were waiting for something. On another camera, camera C02, 2 inmates appeared to be standing away from their bunks, hands pressed against the door frames. Why are they out of bed? Hale muttered. How did they move so fast in the dark? Nothing about this felt like a normal outage. Then he noticed one more feed reconnect. Camera E7, located near the electrical junction box that powered part of the east wing. The image was blurry, distorted, but Hale could make out a shape. A figure standing near the panel. Someone in a prison uniform. The timestamp read 1:46 and 55 seconds a.m., 12 seconds before the blackout. Hale zoomed in. The figure lifted an arm, reached toward the panel. Then the camera cut to black. When the video resumed, the figure was gone. Every instinct in Hale's body told him the same thing. This wasn't an accident. Someone caused the outage. As alarms began to sound and officers rushed toward the darkened units, Hale realized something even more disturbing. Whoever that figure was, they knew exactly where to stand, and exactly what the cameras would and wouldn't see. And the backup cameras had only caught a fraction of it. Emergency sirens echoed through Florence Prison as officers sprinted toward the darkened wings. The blue backup lights flickered against the concrete walls, creating long, ghost-like shadows. The prison wasn't just on alert, it was on edge. Officer Ronald Hale stayed in the control room, switching between the few cameras that were still working. Most feeds were static or black, but the ones that remained online showed things that didn't make sense. On camera C4, 3 inmates stood perfectly still inside their cells, staring at the dark hallway as if expecting someone to appear. On camera H2, an inmate was pressed against the glass window of his cell, whispering something Hale couldn't hear. And on camera A11, the hallway lights flickered again, but only in one section, as if someone was walking through the frame even though the image showed no one. Hale grabbed his radio again. Unit C officers, report status. Any unusual movement? Officer Daniels responded, breathless. Some inmates were already at their doors when lights came back on. They shouldn't know the power cut. It was pitch dark. Hale frowned. They moved in the dark? They couldn't see anything. Daniels hesitated. That's the thing. It's almost like they expected it. At the same moment, the maintenance team reached the electrical room, the same area where the mysterious figure had appeared on camera E7. A maintenance officer radioed in. "Control, we've got fresh tool markings on the panel box." This was tampered with. Hale's heart dropped. "Inside or outside?" he asked. "Inside," the tech replied. "Someone opened this panel carefully. Not forced. Someone who knew the system." The tech paused before adding, "And this wasn't done in the dark. Whoever did it worked while the lights were still on." Hale's fear grew. The blackout wasn't a reaction, it was the plan. He switched to the backup camera feed again. Camera E7 flickered to life for 2 seconds, long enough to show the electrical room door slowly closing by itself. Minutes before officers arrived. No person, no movement, just the door closing. Then another backup camera reconnected. Camera D14, aimed at the stairwell. Hale zoomed in. There, halfway down the stairs, was the same silhouette from camera E7. Still wearing inmate clothing. Still unidentifiable. Walking calmly down the steps seconds after the lights died. "Someone's loose," Hale whispered. "Someone who knows the blind spots." Meanwhile, officers sweeping Unit C4 discovered something even more disturbing. Inmate Leonard Price, a former electrician, was missing from his bunk during the blackout. But when the lights returned, he was back inside, breathing heavily, as though he had run a long distance. Price insisted he never left. But the backup footage suggested otherwise. Camera B19 caught a brief blur, a figure slipping into the shadows near the showers, perfectly matching Price's height and build. But Price's cell door had remained locked according to the system logs. Hale replayed the footage again. The shadow moved with certainty, turning corners, using blind angles, stepping into areas not watched by cameras. This wasn't random. This was rehearsed. By the time officers reached the lower-level mechanical rooms, they found something that made the entire situation even stranger. A set of discarded gloves tucked behind a vent plate. And next to them, a hand-drawn map. A map of the prison's camera blind spots, duct pathways, and old electrical junction access points from before the upgrades. Someone had been studying the building for months. Back in the control room, Hale leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. If the blackout had lasted any longer, if the backup cameras had failed too, if the generators hadn't kicked in, someone inside Florence Prison had been prepared to move during perfect darkness. The scary part? The blackout lasted only 12 seconds. But the footage showed that 12 seconds was enough. Enough for a figure to vanish. Enough for an inmate to leave his cell and return undetected. Enough for someone to tamper with the electrical system. Hale stared at the final frame of camera E7, the blurred figure turning the corner. Whoever he was, he knew Florence Prison better than the staff did. And the worst part? He wasn't finished. By sunrise, Florence Prison had returned to full power, but the atmosphere inside the facility was anything but normal. Officers whispered about the blackout. Maintenance crews avoided the lower tunnels. Supervisors demanded hourly status updates. The entire complex felt shaken. Officer Ronald Hale hadn't slept. He sat in front of the surveillance monitors, replaying the same 12 seconds over and over again. Every time he watched, the same detail bothered him. The shadow in camera E7 didn't move like a panicked inmate. It moved like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Detectives from the Federal Bureau of Prisons Special Investigations Unit, SIU, arrived before noon. Hale showed them the footage, the tampered panel, the silhouette on the stairwell, the inmates moving during the blackout. Detective Marla Jenkins leaned forward. "Rewind," she said. "Right there, freeze it." On the blurry frame, the silhouette stepped into a section of hallway where the camera resolution dipped, a known compression zone caused by outdated wiring. "Whoever this is," Jenkins said, pointing at the screen, "they're avoiding the clean angles." That's not an accident. The SIU began interviewing inmates, focusing on Leonard Price, the former electrician. Price repeated the same line every time. "I never left my bunk. I was asleep." But his hands shook. His breathing stuttered. His eyes darted to the officers, as if he expected someone to be watching. When they inspected his cell, nothing seemed out of place, until they checked underneath the bunk. Hidden between the metal frame and the mattress springs was a scrap of old blueprint paper. A partial map of the prison's early electrical system from the 1990s. Jenkins held it up. "Where did you get this?" Price refused to answer. Jenkins sighed. Someone gave it to him. Someone with access. Meanwhile, maintenance workers discovered a second clue. Behind the mechanical room vent where they found the gloves and camera blind spot map, they located a narrow inspection tunnel, a route built decades ago and sealed off in recent renovations. Except this one wasn't sealed anymore. The bolts securing the panel had been removed and replaced recently. Cleanly, quietly, with the right tools. Hale's voice was shaky as he spoke to Jenkins. "Those tunnels run under multiple wings. If someone used them during the blackout," Jenkins finished his sentence, "they could move freely. No cameras, no sensors." The team descended into the narrow tunnel with flashlights. Dust filled the air. Old wiring lined the walls. Footprints marked the ground, fresh ones. The same boot pattern the techs found near the electrical panel. But the footprints didn't lead to an exit. They stopped near a dead-end wall. Jenkins knelt and examined the brickwork. One brick had faint scratch marks around the edges, as if someone had been trying to remove it. "Someone was here recently," Jenkins muttered, "trying to expand this space." "Why?" Hale asked. Jenkins looked up, eyes dark. "Because they weren't planning an escape. They were planning something else." As the investigation deepened, SIU analysts discovered something even stranger. The power outage wasn't caused by a single disruption. Logs showed multiple micro-fluctuations in the hours leading up to the blackout, small enough to be ignored, but precise enough to look intentional. Someone had been testing the system, calculating how long it would take to trigger the backup generators, learning how the cameras responded to blackout conditions. A dry run. When analysts cross-referenced the timeline with inmate schedules, one pattern stood out. The only person who had been consistently positioned near the affected areas over the previous month was not Leonard Price. It was a different inmate entirely, Daryl Kincaid. Kincaid, an inmate with no electrical background, no disciplinary issues, and no apparent connections, had been cleaning hallways and mechanical rooms on a special work detail. He had unrestricted movement in certain areas and never attracted suspicion. But one detail changed everything. Kincaid had previously worked as a maintenance apprentice before imprisonment, specializing in electrical circuitry. His file didn't list it. His intake interview didn't mention it. But old employment records outside the prison proved it. Jenkins looked at Hale. "He's been hiding in plain sight." When officers entered Kincaid's cell, they found nothing unusual except one object tucked neatly beneath his mattress. A small screwdriver with burn marks on the tip, the same type used on electrical panels. But Kincaid himself was nowhere to be found. He wasn't in his cell. He wasn't at work detail. He wasn't in any recreational area. A full facility search began immediately. At 3:28 p.m., officers found him, standing calmly in the half-lit corridor outside the old inspection tunnel. No resistance. No panic. Just a quiet stare, as if he'd been waiting. When Jenkins approached him, Kincaid said only one sentence. 12 seconds was all I needed. He never explained what he meant, and he never admitted to causing the outage. But the evidence was clear. Small Blue Diamond, he had knowledge of old electrical systems. Small Blue Diamond, he had access to blind spots. Small Blue Diamond, he was present near every affected area. Small Blue Diamond, he moved during the blackout undetected. Florence Prison filed the incident internally as coordinated internal disruption, motive unknown. To this day, investigators still don't know whether Kincaid acted alone, what his goal was, or what he intended to do if the blackout had lasted longer. But one thing is certain. The 12 seconds when Florence Prison went dark revealed how vulnerable even the strongest prisons can be. And what the backup cameras recorded that night still remains locked deep inside federal archives.